start now. Thank you for coming. The title of our session today is How Early is Too Early? And we wanted to have a conversation around college awareness and college planning, starting at an earlier and earlier age. So as we know, engagement is key when it comes to college readiness and college persistence. So studies are coming out and showing that the earlier a student is engaged and connected to their school and career aspirations and coursework, the more likely they are to persist through college. So we brought together a panel of educators who are doing a great job at engaging their students early, and wanted to just have a discussion about how early is too early, is there too early? But to begin, I would just like everyone actually to introduce yourselves quickly. We know the bios are in the app, but just give us a picture of your schools or your district so we can have a little bit of a background.
So I'll begin. My name is Alvin and I'm the Executive Director at KIPP in Minnesota. As most people know, KIPP is a national network of charter schools. We began in Minnesota in 2008. We currently have a middle school that serves 5th through 8th grade students. We're opening our second school, an elementary school, this fall, which we're really excited about, having little kindergartners walking through the halls. And then we have plans to open 3 additional schools in the next 5 years, a second elementary, a second middle, and then a high school as well. So we're really excited about growing in Minnesota and ensuring that kids have access to a great education that puts them on a path to and through college. 98% of our students are on free and reduced lunch, and about 97% of our students are African American, and we serve kids in the North Minneapolis community.
Okay. My name is Philip Hickman, and I'm a superintendent in Columbus, Mississippi. Our school district, we have about 5,000 students, 98% African American, 99% free and reduced lunch. And before that, I was in Houston Independent School District in the Chicago area and also Kansas City and St. Louis area.
Great, thank you.
My name is John Youngquist. I'm the Chief Academic Officer in the Aurora Public Schools in Aurora, Colorado. Aurora is an urban district just east of Denver. We have about 43,000 students, around 60 schools. About 70% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. 40% of our students are second language learners, and we serve a large community of immigrant and refugee families.
Great, thank you so much. So just to start out, since this is a panel on what you're doing for college readiness, just give us an example, a quick example of what you're doing at your schools or your district to promote college awareness at an earlier age.
Well, we partner with Naviance, and we kind of piloted a elementary part of our program. But even within that, those modules, we actually mapped out, we did a backwards design starting from our 5th grade. We wanted to know, in our different magnet schools, if we wanted a 5th grader who was, for instance, an expert in a sense in the content area of health and science and the health and science magnet, then we did a backwards design to figure out what do a kindergartner, even a preschooler, what skills do they need in order to get to that level, and what level of awareness do they need? And so not only is it exposes them to the skills, it exposes them to the different career fields, and then when we bring in people, so at the kindergarten level, the example will be that at a health and science, we're bringing a doctor or a nurse. But when they get to 5th grade, they know what a NATO technologist is. They know what a biotech. We bring in those individuals. So it increases with rigor. And then you can imagine as they go to the middle school and high school, if they stay along those pathways, then by the time they graduate, hopefully what we project is that colleges and universities will start to recruit our students like they would athletes. Because our kids have more content knowledge, they have more awareness in those career fields and what they need to be successful than maybe a sophomore who already is finished with their general classes and just now getting into their content area.
Right.
You know, about a year ago, in a part of the effort to re-engage or redevelop a strategic plan for our district, we started listening to our community and had about 50 to 60 community sessions asking our parents what they need. And they told us very, very clearly that it is about their students having a plan for the future. They felt like their students were going year to year. They felt like they're kind of getting into high school and not certain what's coming next. And we asked them, so what does that mean? Where does that begin? They said as early as possible. So we had kindergarten parents saying, my student needs a plan of some sort. I need to be thinking about a plan for my child. How is it that the school can support this effort? So our strategic plan was reframed to focus on and ensure that a student within 90 days of coming into our school district has a plan for the future. This includes academic and post-secondary workforce skills that we're identifying, and the interest is in, as they're progressing through elementary, middle school, and high school, that they're collecting credentials along the way so that others are able to acknowledge the skills that they've developed.
I'll give it just a completely different example. So even something as simple as kids knowing and understanding what college is from the day they walk into the building. So when our fifth graders first enter our school as our first entry point into our middle school, the name of their homeroom is named after the college that their teacher attended. We build in the why, like we talk about why do we have to go to school, right? What's the purpose of it? We talk about the end goal being college graduation and just success in life and what that means and what the differentiator is, right, when you have a college degree or when you don't, right? We build in college visits, right, starting in fifth grade, so mostly local, right, but kids go on to the campus at the University of Minnesota and check out different departments, and we hear from professors, from student groups, and so they get a true feel and understanding of from a perspective of a fifth grader, right? What it's like to be in college and the importance of it. And so drilling down even smaller, right? And we have long-term plans and we build in a lot of other pieces, but from the practical standpoint of a teacher having conversations regularly with kids, I think it's really vital to start building that thought and that knowledge of, I can go to college, I will go to college, this is what that means, and this is what that looks like. And an example of that would be X, right? And we think that that's an important thing to do from the get-go. And as we start even kindergarten next year, we'll do that same piece, right? Our kindergartners will walk the campus of McAllister, right? To know what it's like to be a student in college, or get a sense of it anyway.
Mm. Great. Well, let's stay on that topic for just a second. What are the perspectives of your faculty, of your staff members? How do you get their buy-in? Do you have any resistance to promoting college at an earlier age?
You know, for us, I think the resistance is just about time. How does it fit? Is this another initiative? Is this something else for me to do and to create? I don't have enough time to plan. It's kind of the typical conversation. And so we've been careful in planning out what is it that teachers are facing, what do they know the needs of their students are. We know that when a principal or a teacher is trying to solve a problem, then they're interested in having support in solving for that problem. And when we're able to provide an efficient means to be responsive to that problem, then that helps. So the fifth grade teacher who's driving to work, and I heard this story from a fifth grade teacher one day, driving to work and trying to figure out, I know that I have to talk to my students about college. I know that I need to create a context where that vision is there, but I don't have the resource, I don't have the tool. So I'm kind of making it up every day. So if we're able to provide a tech-based or somehow a tool that is integrated into their context as a fifth grade teacher, it solves for them a way to easily engage and ensure that their students are going to connect to that conversation in a way that's meaningful and is going to be there over time, then we've begun to see some real responsiveness from principals and teachers.
Right, and I don't think we necessarily have the resistance because we started with educating our adults, and to me it's the same analogy, you feed the adults, they want to eat the kids, and so I think that once we educated our adults, they saw the importance of it, and then we figured out the plan of how to do it. But once we kind of put in their perspective that this is what's best for kids, and I don't think anybody could argue that, and then then it was easier to kind of lay it out. Right.
Okay.
I'll just make one last note about that. So we tend to be a pretty data-driven organization, and I think when you look at statistics of essentially our kids, so minority low-income kids, it's staggering, right? And so it's really hard for a teacher on our campus to know that right now currently only 40% of African American students are graduating from North Minneapolis high schools, right? And only 10% of those students are actually matriculating in college, and less than half of those are actually graduating from college, right? So the importance of spending that time and energy, they understand how vital it is. I think that's the piece that we try our best to do, is communicate the why around what we're doing to make sure that people are bought in. And it's never easy, right? I think the hardest part of working in education is working with adults, right? And the kids are the easy part, but it's bringing everyone together and making sure that they understand the why. I think that's a huge part.
Yeah, great. So switching gears a little bit, at Hobsons we have been doing a lot of exploration around early college. We just released our navigants for elementary schools, or our curriculum for elementary schools, and we've been talking a lot about college readiness versus college awareness. So for you, in your elementary schools, early, middle school, is it college awareness or is it college readiness?
I think it has to be both. You know, when you look at, if you look at my kids, and I'm serious, my kids were talking, my personal children were talking about colleges early on, because that's where dad went, or that's where mom went.
Right.
And so even that builds what's called self-efficacy, your perceived ability to do something. And so, and that deals in that persistence, because he knows, both of them knew that that's just where you go next after high school. And so every step was calculated. But when you look at our children, especially our inner city kids who are not exposed to it from an awareness standpoint, to know that that's out there at a young age, to know that every step that you're doing actually links to your success in your college years and a professional career. And so, but the other aspect of it is just not the awareness, is that it has to be tangible, all right? And so when you start linking the careers, and when you start linking the skills to be ready, and the skills span beyond academic skills, the soft skills, that they have to understand that there are soft skills that are necessary to be ready too. So I don't think that you can separate the two. I think if you're, you know, you have to be intentional about weaving them both in order to prescribe to a successful and a whole child.
I think the two things are essentially synonymous of one another. I mean, when my nephew was first born, you know, I bought him a college onesie, right, from my alma mater, because it's, to me, I think it's really fun and also important. I want him to go there, right? And so that awareness started before he could even truly think, right? I also think that it's really important to, when we're talking about the readiness versus awareness piece, right? Obviously, kids need to be academically ready to be successful in college. Like, that is enormous. Like the major first step of kids being prepared and doing well when they actually get to college, and quite frankly, just to get in. But the other piece is like, one of the things that we look really closely at is minority college completion rates at colleges. And so one of the things that we shifted when we started looking at this data at KIPP is we used to name, I mentioned that we name our homerooms after colleges that our teachers attended, but then when we looked at college completion rates of African American students at those schools, they varied greatly, right? So one of the things we shifted is that we specifically chose colleges that had a 50% or higher college completion rate, 6-year college completion rate of minority students, right? And so even that piece of kids understanding and thinking about where they go and how many people that look like me are graduating from this school, like, that matters, right? The data doesn't lie, right? So when we're doing the college match, our oldest alumni are seniors currently in high school, and so we're going through pretty intense college counseling with them. And when we're looking at two different schools, aside from the finances and all the other pieces, one of the things we're looking really closely at is that number. And so that awareness piece is bigger than just like knowing that college is a thing. But when you drill into the numbers, it matters. Like, that choice matters so much, because it's one of the biggest investments you'll make in your life, financially too, right? And so they're synonymous for sure, but they're both equally important, I think.
Yeah, synonymous. You know, I would prefer that you actually are intentional about both, that you actually look at them as separate entities, that it's a continuum. So for instance, if you really look at the data as well, there's African Americans who are college ready. There are Hispanic students who are college ready. There are low income students who are college ready but still drop out of college. And a lot of it deals with that awareness piece to me. And like you said, it goes beyond awareness of there's a college out there, but there are people like me who could be successful. You know, if I look, you know, talking to interviewing students in a turning point in their life where they were just in college kind of aimless in a sense until they started linking up and seeing successful individuals who were not TV successful, meaning that I don't feel like I connect myself with that stiff person on TV, whether they're a minority or not. But when they actually rub shoulders with individuals and they were aware, you know, and it built that self-efficacy that they can, you know, persevere through the adversity, or they can persevere and be successful through college. So I think you have to be intentional about both of them and separate them.
You know, the idea of college awareness starts so early on. And I think about, like, Phil, my own children, before they were even born, there was awareness that I would likely have children and they'll be in college. And so my mom, I think 10 years before I had kids, right, she's planning on the college. She's like contributing to a college fund that I didn't know would possibly exist. And there is this incredible gap between children of privilege that have really a generational level of support for rolling into college and engaging in successful lives, if that's what that means, and gives them a better shot at, and others that we're serving that are new to the country, that are coming in refugee status, where their parents they haven't prioritized this as the greatest interest or need yet, and so the responsibility of listening to developing a relationship with parents as early as possible from birth or from entry into the country. We can't do this alone, but we need partnerships with our cities and communities to ensure that the concept is there when they are ready for it and is present, and that there's a supportive conversation around what this means. And I think that it has an impact really from birth through the K-12 experience and into college. At one of the school tours yesterday, we were being hosted by a young lady who was in the 11th grade at the school. She acknowledged to us and she introduced us to the college advisor behind the glass, who is there every day. She had walked past this person for the 3 years that she's in this school. She said, though, that this is the year that she figured out that she could have access to college, right? That she would be able to afford it somehow, be that through scholarship or grants or other means. And that, to me, is where we go wrong, right? That should be happening so early on that the parent response can be, it's a possibility, and there's potential there. And a child is not trying to figure that out quietly and in their head over the years until someone, by accident or on purpose, really reaches out and connects to them. So that awareness piece is really important. And I think the idea of readiness certainly begins so early on. Also, academic skills, and with the acknowledgement of the post-secondary skills that students are going to need to be, that they begin to develop in our preschools and kindergartens, actually.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And I would love to hear from Phil and Alvin as well on how you get parents involved. All of the research, most of the research shows that that for first-generation students, a lot of their college readiness and knowledge about college comes directly from the schools. Parents do or do not push their students to go to college as a higher rate as the non-first generation students. So how do you get parents involved? How do you keep them involved? Do you encounter any pushback from these parents? Just talk a little bit about parents.
I think we need to be careful in some sense. So parent involvement, first of all, the research says parent involvement that equates to student achievement is what parents do with kids at home. And so one aspect is educating parents of how to communicate and interact with their kids at home. The other problem that we need to be careful of is that, and we have always talked about parent involvement for years and years, the years since I've been in education, and we haven't really done a lot to it. And I say that because there are circumstances. For instance, and I have parents of poverty that work 16, 18 hours a day just to maintain poverty, right? And if they leave their job, they don't have the luxury of me. I can leave my job and go 10. If they leave their job, then they're fired. And so as a school system, first we have to build up support systems to counteract that. I think it's real important that as a school system, we know all the factors that equate to failure. And a lot of them are out of our control. But what we do control is the minute second that child walks into our building and the minute second that child leaves. What impact are we having as far as building a resiliency in college and career readiness? You know, a resiliency and those kind of things. And so that's kind of how I take it. Not that we do what we can to get our parents involved. And our parents are involved. And we even train a group of parents that go out to the community centers or go out to parents' homes that train parents where they're more comfortable and when they have time and those kind of things. So we have a lot of parent networks and all those. But I'm just saying that in a realistic way, we have parents that we point the finger that they're not being involved, but it's not because they don't want to, and some of them do, but it's not because they don't want to, but there are life circumstances that prevent that, then we can't ignore the support systems or the lack of support systems for that child and the need for that child to be successful. And we have to build those in place.
Okay, great.
I think just one example. So as I mentioned earlier, our oldest alumni are seniors in high school and going through the college application process. And so we hosted a FAFSA night on the day that the application opened, because you guys know the sooner you get that in and completed, the quicker you know about access to money. And of course, we invited parents and we invited the students. Every one of the kids came, right? They're seniors, right? So they drive or they're taking the bus and they get around. So every one of the kids came, and only a handful of parents came. It was at a really inopportune time. It was in the evening, but it wasn't super convenient, right? What we learned from that is that we probably just need to do it more one-on-one, right? Which, as we're pretty small still, there's less than 50 seniors. We'll have 100 seniors in a couple of years, so we won't be able to do that as one-on-one. But what we found is we just need to be much more open to how we do it, right? So tons of phone conversations, tons of meetings at parents' homes, meeting at the school, just figuring out other ways. And in some cases, you know, with parents' mission, hey, just fill this out for me. Here's my login, right? Just being super flexible and working with families. Because the thing that I've found in working with families over the last 15 years is that every single parent cares deeply about their kid and wants them to be successful. Like, no one's arguing that. It really is just about finding ways that we can access families in convenient opportunities, right? And us figuring out and problem solving around how to do that. So that's what I'd say. Like, our parents are hugely involved, and when we need them, they're there. And we just have to be creative around how we access them and what we put in front of them to make sure that they can be involved.
So there are a lot of access programs for first-generation students, underrepresented students at a high school level and to some extent at a middle school level. Do you think that the approach is different for college readiness, college awareness at the elementary school level for students who may be first generation?
You know, I think it's probably not completely different, but amended. And so we in our community last year opened a welcome center for immigrant and refugee families, and one focus there is ensuring that there's a connection in regard to sort of future orientation. They're interested in what is life like right now in survival, in regard to survival in our community. We're also interested in supporting those ideas and their current needs with beginning to create a sense of and a relationship that will help us develop over time an understanding of what a college orientation and what college access is about in our communities. And so we know that the moment we meet a family, that's not going to be the primary focus, but for us it's developing relationships so that we can circle back to those families and re-engage them in conversations when there's a level of readiness that'll allow them to have a longer view on what's going on with their students.
Right.
I think that, so another, I think, insane statistics. So Minnesota ranks 49th in the nation for essentially access to counselors. The ratio of counselor to students is 1 to over 750, right, in the state. And so we do a lot of fundraising to make sure that we have really strong KIPP through college programming to make sure that our kids have the same opportunities that a lot of other families may have outside of their the school resources, to make sure that kids are accessing the right schools. And so one of our funders came through and we were doing a grant renewal meeting, and we were talking about some of the things that we do with our KIPP through college programming with our students, and she said, you know, I paid someone almost $7,000 to do this with my senior, right? And so when I think about like it doesn't matter, right? If you're a first generation college student or if you come from, you know, generations of like families who've gone to Harvard every year, right? Like you still want to make sure that you're doing, that we as schools are doing whatever we can to prepare our kids, both when it comes to awareness and obviously academics to get into the school, to get into whatever school that they want to go to and be successful in life. And I think that starting from even when kids come in at kindergarten, like 100% of our seniors in that cohort I was mentioning, all of them will be first generation college going kids, right? But the work we're doing with them is not really much different than like as this parent mentioned, that she did with her kid, right? Through a resource that she was able to access, right? So it's really similar, I think. And I mean, getting into a good college is the same no matter where you're from or what you look like, right? And so I think that it's really about leveling the playing field more for me than it is about there being like true differentiating factors.
And I think there's like he's talking about in both of them, there's a level of access to resources that are different in each generation that causes that gap between the two. And so it's about leveling the playing field, providing the resources. One, you're a little bit more direct and intentional about it. And then the other, you're still providing the resources in the same sense.
The opportunity at the earliest grades is really a very fun one because so much of it can be around, play and connections and relationships and, discovering how to access information and what to do with new information, being able to engage in just activities, right? And a young student who is in the 3rd grade right now who 4 years ago at a school in our district was able to just have fun in an after-school activity called Sticky Fingers, right? Now they're focused on becoming a chef. They love to cook. It's what it's about. But many of our students in our district don't have access or the opportunity to engage in just a variety of activities that allow them to explore with their friends what it's like to do these things. And that also is a part of creating the context for thinking about my future if we're able to frame those conversations with them.
I think, one of the things that's important when you look at content-wise, how do you provide that awareness and how do you provide that information to students? I mean, one of the key things that we had to go back and look at, whether you're looking at your traditional student whose families have been through universities and success and those who haven't, is that that in their lifetime, when we're talking our elementary kids, it's going to look totally different. I mean, college is not going to be the same. The access is going to look a little different, and there's going to be a different level of skills that are necessary. And so, I mean, we really had to look at, okay, to the best of our knowledge, if we were futurists, what do we predict, and then do a backwards design in that sense as far as intentional skills and intentional awareness of what kids. And so even if we're working on a situation where we want kids, our kids are learning to be chefs, and they're learning a variety of career fields, but how do we infuse technology in that? And so that they use technology to make decisions about, different ways to interact and to make different pastas or those kind of things. And so it's really weird when you look at it from that standpoint because it's uncomfortable. It's not what we're used to. College may not have walls. College is going to be about, having access to different information that we have access to. And it's not going to be that you're just looking up information, and writing it down, regurgitating it, and how smart a memory you'll have, or those kind of things. It's really higher level skills that are appropriate for kids, even at a lower age.
Right.
Did anybody here go to that session yesterday on the college bubble, which I thought was really interesting, and was both like I was fearful of it, but I was thinking that maybe there's an opportunity there because the access that any children have to university experiences is so expensive right now. And why is that the case when we're talking about almost, my family members, my friends, they're talking about every time $40,000 a year for college, and our community members are not going to be able to access that. What might happen if the whole system seems to somehow for a moment be so disrupted that it becomes accessible to the students within our community in a very, very different level? I think there's, it's exciting to think about that, because right now we think in almost limited views for our students.
Right.
So there's, immediate access needs to be, the first, get as many credits as college credits as you can in high school, which is fantastic. But I think there's a limited view in regard to then access, because it's going to allow you to be successful for the first 1 or 2 years in community college, because we oftentimes aren't able to think bigger than that for our students, because dollars are limiting even our view on it. So a part of this whole conversation, I think, that it can be us figuring out how we're messaging and communicating well beyond our communities. There's a more global responsibility to create access for our students over time.
Yeah. If you talk about a resistance, when I first came to Columbus 2 years ago, and this is Mississippi, so your statistics, you're 49, we're 50 and everything, okay? And so, and so to talk to my community about preparing our kids to be globally competitive, you would have thought that I said cuss words. I mean, people were upset. Why are we, the community, what are we doing at this young age when we could be teaching? And I had to let them understand that they're not just competing with kids in the next county. They're going to be competing for jobs. And then I said, and by the way, when I say they should be, I am kind of telling you a story, because they already are. That's happening now. That's not a thing of the future. That's something that's already now. It's just going to get more complex. And so, just even that is scary for parents that don't have that futuristic view or that access to that window.
Right. So let's stay on the topic of differentiation really quick. We know that not all students will go to college. Not all students will want to go to college. Do we prepare our elementary students, early middle school students for college, and that's the only option? Do we teach them all of the options that are out there? What do we do with that topic?
So we talked about the awareness piece and the readiness piece.
Yep.
And so, and I still think at a younger age, you still have to have them aware of all their options. And even when I talk about college and career readiness, we're talking about post-secondary education. And kids have to learn how to be lifelong learners. But in order to prepare them for the future that they're going to embark on, I mean, it's real. When you think of college and career readiness, you cannot take out the 4 C's. And so, you have to really embed communication, which is probably in a lower socioeconomic environment is key. When you talk about written communication, spoken word, all those kind of things that allow you to access. I think Ruby Payne said, if you go to a job interview and you say, I ain't got none, chances are you ain't got no job either, right? And so so communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. I mean, those things that you start to embed, you start to intentionally embed in lessons, you start to intentionally embed within the curriculum. And those are kind of laying the foundation. It looks a little bit different at the younger ages, but it's paramount.
Yeah.
I mean, it's created an opportunity for us because we're so focused on accelerating academic skills, which is vital, right? So our students, the moment they walk into our doors in Aurora, we're catching them up, and we know that is the first role. But there's this new opportunity, and the one we've engaged most recently, about post-secondary skills. And that gets to be about play and exploration and how you work with other people, and that these are vital and important skills to be able to not only kind of practice on the playground, but practice in the academic setting as well. And we're excited about an exploration that we've engaged in the last year with digital badging. So we're identifying what are the skills that students need to be acknowledged with, and how early can we begin to do that? We can begin to acknowledge truly critical thinking and collaboration and other post-secondary skills early on in their development, and not only allow students to play and participate and practice those, but to kind of formally acknowledge those. So we're developing strands of digital badges that will allow teachers to acknowledge, not just through like another feather that day for good behavior, but this is a very specific skill that you're going to need to be successful as you continue in elementary and middle, high school, and college and beyond. And so let's begin to formally acknowledge those and allow students to collect those badges over their course of time so that they're not only able to recognize them at a level with family and friends and teacher, but that these are badges that as they're progressing into high school and beyond, they're acknowledged by local corporations and businesses and universities so that there's a confidence that they're walking out of high school with these skills intact. They're credentialed, and externally there's a validation that these skills matter and that these students have them. So we're excited about that whole concept as it develops too.
I think ensuring that kids know all the options is really important. I also think, though, one of the things that we talk a lot about with our kids is opportunity, right? And when we think about what having a college degree allows you access to versus not having a college degree lets you have access to, it's staggering, right? I think specifically so my partner, his family is sort of from the mountain range of Minnesota, right? And there are lots of little towns that are in the area survive solely on iron mining, right? Which has taken a huge hit, as many people know, and there are countless numbers of people who are jobless, right? And many of them, in hearing stories and in talking to people, don't have college degrees, right? And luckily, through some access programs, they're going back to school and getting degrees, right? But I'm okay with any of our kids deciding to be an electrician or go to the Art Institute or take a completely different career path, right? However, I want them to know that this is what, this is the difference between having an associate's degree versus having a bachelor's degree versus having a terminal degree in whatever field that you're interested in versus having going through a 2-year program as an electrician, right? And let them be able to make that decision, and also let all of those things actually be options, right? So that way when they are a senior in high school, they can access a 4-year university, right? Or access one of those programs, as opposed to it being, I don't have any options, so this is what I'm gonna do, right? And so for me, that's the biggest piece. It's ensuring that kids know and understand what's out there, right? But then also are truly academically set up by the time they're ready to make those decisions, able to actually access any of those options. And it's not because the system has failed them and they're in 9th grade reading at a 3rd grade level, right? But instead that it's about them truly making a decision about what's gonna make them happy in life, and that I have this like plethora of options to choose from.
I think we have to be real careful. I mean, we definitely let kids know what options, but they have to be realistic. And so you have to have a tiered approach. And I say that because even the jobs that we think that we're preparing that student for at the kindergarten level, the 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade level, those jobs are going to be taken over by robotics. They're going to be automated. And so, we still have to be careful of not preparing our kids for those 4 C's type of behaviors. So for instance, even in Mississippi right now, we have what is called high-tech manufacturing. And the funny thing is, or not funny, I'm sorry, we have like 80 positions open a month and they pay $60,000, $70,000, but they become unfilled because what people didn't understand is high-tech manufacturing, there's only one manager to 200 people, okay? And so you have to learn how to problem solve daily when there's a problem. So you have to be able to critically think, you have to be able to apply, you have to be able to collaborate with your team right there on the spot, as opposed to the big problem that one manager will have to deal with. They can't find people who have those skills to do those things. And those jobs are forever gonna be changing. When I was at Houston and I was driving to Mississippi, I stopped at a Wendy's, and literally no one was at the counter. I'm standing there, and pretty soon, you kind of get that, am I not dressed right? Hello, can someone help me? And they said, sir, look in front of you. And it was a kiosk where I order my food and swipe my card. They're just back there to make the food. And so pretty soon, back there to make the food is gonna be gone. And then what? I talked to an owner of McDonald's in Mississippi, And he said, you know, because actually you can have an app and just drive up and order food way beforehand, all those kind of things. And I said, man, you're eliminating jobs. He said, we're repurposing jobs. Somebody's going to have to fix those robots. Somebody's going to have to code those applications and all those kind of things. It's a totally different concept than where I was thinking with trying to prepare a kid that, you know, maybe mid-level management of a McDonald's or something like that. So we just have to be aware of you know, in futuristic terms, because that looks different for our middle school students. It looks different for our struggling high school students. And so, you know, how do we tier that approach and provide the best solutions for our kids?
I think there's a gap there for a lot of the students that we're serving in Aurora in regard to access and practice and technology, and we haven't solved for that opportunity yet. I mean, that's why this space, these few days is so great, but we are falling quickly behind, and I think that that's a part of the preparation process that we're not there with yet. So how is it that, again, my young ladies at home have all of these devices around? We have 4 right in front of us, right? I mean, my gosh, it's more than some of our classrooms have right now. How is it that without that access, they're able to practice these skills that are going to allow them to be as efficient as they can and have their minds working in the way that's going to be able to allow them access to the kinds of jobs that you're talking about? Because there will be jobs in creating those devices and creating those systems that are going to make that to happen. But right now, we're ill prepared for all the reasons that are being talked about at the conference right now. Need to solve for that, as well as I was talking about, the relationships and this thinking about how to begin to even orient toward the future. This seems even more possible, but we're not yet set up to be able to engage a level of of practice and participation in the technological world as we need to.
Mm-hmm. And I still emphasize those soft skills that are those interpersonal and relationship skills that are very important for children to understand. And so I'm looking at a surface, and so when I went to Microsoft, and it had to have been like 4 years ago just to visit and tour, and what they talked about was that, so first, if you can have the most skilled programmer, but if they don't know how to get along with people, you know, they're going to be out of a job. It's no longer that you're at home in your room and you're, and so they were talking about when they made the Surface that they just locked, I take it they really didn't lock people in a room for months, but they locked them in a room for months because they didn't want them to have the exposure to the iPad and all those things that's already out there, and to be so creative and create something that is so different, you know, that will scale the market. And but those people had to come together and talk and collaborate and communicate, and not just say, I'm doing this, that, and the other. And so, and match skills, and not just have that alpha personality or the arrogant personality, and produce a product. And so that's what it's if we're not preparing our kids in that sense, then when you look at college and career readiness, and we think it's just about the academic skills, if we think it's just about the institutions that kids have access to, that we're missing it. We're missing it.
Right. So I think part of access has to be paid for, right? So technology costs money, and bringing on staff costs money. So let's talk really quickly about an educator's favorite subject, budgets, right? How do you prioritize college readiness or college awareness initiatives at an early age, early grades, when it might not be status quo as of yet? How do you justify that to your board and your families and your staff members?
I don't think you make it an initiative. It's about what we do. So it has to be the priority, one of our top priorities, but it cannot be an initiative because they come and go. And literally, I've been in districts where we have initiative fatigue. I mean, the superintendent is just firing away, and everybody's just we're as soon as we conquer one thing, we're on another. We barely have a grasp of what we're doing, so everything becomes watered down. And so again, I go back to the words intentional. I go back to the words, it just has to be about our culture. It's what's best for kids. And those things are just woven in everything that we do. Not just a part of what we do. It's woven in everything that we do. And so even if you look at, and because when you talk about budget, let's go for PE for an example, right? And so when we had to look at, are we preparing our kids to be successful in the future, in a sense? How do we put 4 C's? How do we woven critical thinking in a PE class? Not saying PE class don't have it. So the first question is, does anybody major in volleyball? why are we doing it like that? Nobody comes out major. Is it about health? Is it about lifelong learning? Is it about those kind of things? How do we, so even if we say we want to do a volleyball unit, but how do we incorporate the Fitbit? How do we incorporate technology and those kind of things, wearable devices and those things to make our kids more those who are disadvantaged? Because my son has an Apple Watch, and he's in 5th grade, but but he loves technology, and so, but how do we have underserved kids have those same touches with technology and those same, interactions with technology, no matter what setting that they're in? And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, we've reached a beautiful place with technology in the district because like 5 years ago, devices were the problem. How can we get enough devices? How can we buy that? Well, Park came, right? The devices were not, they were purchased, right? They're now in front of our kids. They're flooding our classrooms to some degree. Now it's about what the problem should have been in the first place. How do we use those devices? How do we use them early on to get students, connecting and practicing and enjoying that learning in a different way? How is it then that we engage the learning for our teachers and for our staffs that are going to, while we're focused here on early planning for college and career, also focused on making meaningful experiences for our students with technology? That's a bigger challenge, right? The problem was, well, could we ever send a device home with the student? Well, if I could, it's $150, $160, and it has the opportunity to change and shift their life in lots of ways. We were sending home devices with students, and we were worried about online access at home. We provided, access for the students. Well, the students saw that as limited access and just clicked on their parent's cell phone instead. The world was there for them in lots of ways. So we're needing to listen to our students and listen to our families and our teachers, certainly, to begin to solve differently early on for access to technology, access to the opportunities to begin planning differently as well.
I'd echo the sentiments of both gentlemen here, and I think the other thing, like you hit it on the head when you said that, it's not initiative, right? It's college awareness and college readiness is the same thing as like making sure that kids know how to read, right? Like it's just embedded into what we do every day. It's not some new thing. It's part of our daily, just normal culture, right? And I think that's what it has to be. And I think it is a little bit easier for me to say that, like working at KIPP, right? Like it is, like we hire from that. We we can be a little bit more nimble, right? But when I think back to when I was a principal in Houston ISD, right, of a large, comprehensive elementary school, that culture didn't exist, right? It is something that I believed in and knew as part of my sort of leadership that I needed to do something about. And so prioritizing it with staff, the whole change management piece, right? Like showing the data, talking about like our community and what the numbers look like for the high school that our kids are going to. What does that mean? Why, right? Digging a little deeper, thinking about them and their own personal children, right? Are they talking to their personal kids about college? Of course they are, right? We need to do that then with the kids at our school, right? And make sure that families are talking about it too. So I think it's also just prioritizing, right? Like similar with the technology, like we know we have to do it and we have to figure out a way around it, and it has to be embedded into what we do every day. And you can't think of it as something separate or something that's an add-on, but instead right alongside sort of the normal building blocks of what makes really great education.
For those who are leaders, like I'm a superintendent, to me, once we established that it was important, my philosophy is that I plant the seed in the morning and I'm cutting the grass by noon. Not at the end of the day, by noon. And so I don't care who brought out the water, who tilled the grass. That's not important. If we know that this is something important, then these kids only get one chance at third grade, hopefully, right? They hopefully get one chance at fourth grade. And so we have the opportunity now to prepare them for their future, to be a college and career readiness, as opposed to we keep sitting around and thinking about how we're going to implement and do this, that, and the other. And by that time, kids get further and further along in that hole, in that divide.
Yeah. For us too, it's this conversation. It has to be motivating because we're still in many ways as a district while we have a different view on where we should be, stuck in what has been our status quo as a low-performing district over time, as a district that's not getting its students to graduation in college as it needs to over time. We count our stories, and we have our failures that we acknowledge. We had a valedictorian last year from a high school who a 4.8 plus grade point average that ended up going to our community college, which might be okay, but the challenge was that they went there for a semester and dropped out. And we own that, and we say we started that 12 years ago, right? We did not engage this family, we did not engage the student, we did not engage the community of teachers, of staff, of other parents, in ensuring that the student is going to progress in a way that is going to be predictably successful for him, instead of us creating what we did. So we're learning those lessons, and they're very motivating to the work that we're doing at the earliest grades.
And I would not let resources and manpower, man or woman, be the issue, because there's technology that educates and provide pathways for college and career readiness, that are out there, that are good tools to invest in, to close the gap between that one-to-one relationship you may not have because you have a low ratio of counselor to students.
Right. Great. Well, that was the perfect note to end on. Before I thank our panel, just a couple of items. If you have any questions for our panelists, they'll be right outside the room after the session, so feel free to come and ask them questions. Also, all of their contact information is in the app, so you can contact them there as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Naviance for Elementary School released today. So if you want any more information on that, you can go to hobsons.com. But thank you so much to our panelists. I think it was a great conversation, and one that's to be continued. So thank you.
Thank you.